Hi folks, Jason here. In this video, we're going to be diving into the fundamental process of storyboarding, the essential blueprint for any animation, film, or narrative-driven pre-production asset. We're going to master the techniques needed to translate your ideas into clear, cinematic panels. For our demonstration, we'll be creating one focused, 9-frame scene that captures a key moment of decision and consequence from a narrative prompt entitled Altar of Echoes. This is a perfect length to showcase pacing, perspective, and character emotion. I'll be using Photoshop for the demonstration, but rest assured, every technique from applying perspective to choosing the right camera angle is easily transferable if you're working with traditional pen and paper. So let's get going. So before we get into doing the storyboards, I'm just going to lay out a little bit of the background as to what we're doing. So the story we're exploring is a core sequence from our narrative, which could easily be the basis for a video game, an animation, or major motion picture. The setting is a desolate, dying planet. Life, health, and well-being have been stripped away by an invading crystalline race called the Golems. And the Golems have seized the source of the world's vitality, powerful crystals which hold the literal life force of the entire civilization. So the aim here is to create a scene where we've got a sort of confrontation between the hero and the Golem character. So that's what we're going to get into now. So let's start off the storyboard, and I'm going to refer to the first frame. So we've got a wide shot, which is essentially an establishing shot. Now we've got the action here, so it's basically like a vast cavern. We've got this altar, and also this kind of crystal golem there as well. And we've got the hero character who's kind of approaching the altar. And the reason for this is to kind of like establish the world. It's going to emphasize like the hero's kind of vulnerability, the size of him, and obviously we've got this kind of golem as the kind of looming threat. So I'm going to start off by going to the storyboards. Now I've got these, I'm working from black on this. I find it quite useful. You might be working just from like a white sheet, which is fine. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change this to white. I'm going to just add a bit of a sort of gradient to this, just for, I've got something to kind of like to work with, something like that. Okay, and from there, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to go all in on the detail at the moment. This is just really creating like a thumbnail. So you want something like a sort of, something that's wide. So it's a wide sort of shot. So you can have like a horizon line. I might just change the color of that. So you're going to have this kind of like horizon line, and depends where you want to put it. If you want to kind of put this like, the altar somewhere at the center, you could do that. You could even potentially have it at an angle. That could be something else as well. So instead of it kind of being, head on, it could be something, even potentially kind of low angle, something like that. And you can have this sort of character sort of stood there, and maybe like looming in the sort of in the background is this kind of character. And maybe this character is not going to be in full view, or maybe like not activated. This is how you can kind of plan it. So the golem character is kind of like almost like an automaton. So they're kind of they don't have a mind of their own. And of course, this being a kind of cavern, you could have, let me just take the, you could put these kind of like receding lines in. So it's kind of like these kind of things that are going off the screen. You also want to be thinking, when you're drawing in your storyboards, you got to be thinking outside. This is what the camera is seeing, okay? So you don't really want to be thinking in terms of trying to fit everything in there. You're sort of taking like a snapshot of like what's going on in the scene. So you also got to think beyond this scene, yeah? So it's going to be coming out of that area. You've got to be thinking, if I just go back to here, like what's going on beyond this scene. You know, there might be other things. There might be other parts of this kind of cavern. Maybe it's like stalactites and stalagmites and things like, I don't know, you know, just stuff where you've got things that are kind of, you know, outside of the scene, but they are kind of there, right? And again, don't focus on detail. Just keep this as simple as, and you may even change it. So that could be, and you can experiment with this, of course, but that's our first scene. Let's go and have a look at the next part. So the next part is, it's a medium shot. We've got the Crystal Golem is dominating the frame. It's jagged crystalline structure, flared with light. It raises a massive threatening fist towards the seeker. And so it's basically to show the antagonist's power. Low angle makes the golem appear overwhelming and menacing, and highlighting the scale of the danger. Now, you might have some frames in between all this, but in terms of like, you know, what I'm trying to say, in terms of, you know, at least just kind of creating this piece, you may even sandwich in other parts in between that. But in terms of like, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to sort of have this character. Again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to perhaps uplight it this time. So you got something like, whenever you've got like a bad guy in a movie or a video game, generally there's uplighting, right? It's like a tried and tested method for you know, for showing them in a sort of what's the word, in a menacing light. So we can have something like this. So it being a medium shot, you can have, maybe it's kind of raising this kind of, you got this, you know, again, you kind of have to use like foreshortening for the body, because we're kind of like looking up and it's kind of looking down. So if I use a bit of this white, again, I'm just trying to keep this as loose as I can. I don't really want to be, so something like that. And then we kind of got the mouth. Maybe the mouth's kind of open. Right. And again, I may not stick with this. It's just mainly to block him, to get a sense of scale, and also just, you know, what the position is. I mean, again, and also you don't necessarily need to stick to the script. It could be, instead of a fist, it just could be like a raised kind of hand. The hand kind of comes up, and it's, you know, it's like it's awakening from its kind of stupor. Yeah, it's the approach of the character here. If I can just come out from that a second, if I can just sort of draw here, so you kind of got the arrow and something's activated. If it was a video game, you'd have something like a trigger box. So there'd be like a trigger box, and then it'd basically then set in motion the animation for the character. So then you kind of got this. So it kind of wakes up. Now you could even, if you just go back to the little script now. So we've got this medium shot of the character, you know, the crystal character dominating the frame. Shot 3 is a medium shot. Now this is the hero, the seeker draws his sword. So there's a kind of, even in between all that, you could have a reaction. But what we'll do here is we'll kind of show the character now. Again, I'm just going to create something like that, and then just change the color. So you've got, it's a medium shot, drawing the sword. So medium shot would be kind of like, yeah, head sort of to torso, maybe something like that. You could even do it. Now, I'm not sure if it says this. It doesn't say high angle. It's not like it's a POV of the golem, but maybe you could make it like just a little bit of like you could do like high angle. You could have the character kind of looking up, you know, just to kind of, again, give a sense of the kind of scale. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to have the character with the sword kind of drawn. So something like that. And again, it's just to kind of give a sense of scale. I'll just change the color on that. Right. And this character is kind of looking up. You could even go, I might just stretch this a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll just scale that down a bit. I want to see a little bit more of that, a bit more of the sword. So what I'll do here is I'll just kind of have the character. So this is like the foreshortening. You've got the character kind of looking up. This is the head, like that. Maybe even that arm could be out a little bit more. So maybe I'll just take a bit of that out. So you kind of got a bit of the arm, maybe even going out a shot. But then I just wanted to kind of show the character then with the sword. Yeah, so you kind of got this wide shot, and then we've got like the leg, the thigh there, then the calf, and then the knee, you know, the feet. And it could be the same. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail. I can work back into that. I'm not going to worry. But something like that. So they're kind of looking up like so. Okay, so we've got that part. So we've got the opening of the establishing. Then we've got this thing waking up, like dormant, out of its slumber. Then we've got the character, you know, draws the sword, like so. Let's go and have a look at the next part. So we've got shot 4, which is an over-the-shoulder shot. So looking over the seeker's shoulder, the golem's huge fist lunges forward. Right, so the motion lines emphasize the attack speed, and the purpose of this is to sort of show the conflict, captures the intensity of the confrontation, and frames the viewer within the seeker's perspective. Right, so again, so this is going to be over the shoulder. So this again is like a high angle. So if I just move down to here now, so we're going to sort of see down from the angle over the camera's going to be, let's draw the camera. So the camera's going to be sort of there. And then it's going to be looking down like so at the character. So this is where you're going to have to kind of use your imagination a bit, because obviously this is all coming from imagination. So if this is over the shoulder, we don't really want the show too much of the golem character, but it just needs to be enough to suggest. So we could have something like, it could even be, that could be the head, even there. So we're kind of getting something like that. So that will be the, let me just draw a bit of the, let's put a bit of the, something like that kind of going on, right? And then we can have our hero character stored, say, again, similar pose to before. So we can have, you know, obviously have a look at that. That's going to change, of course, but we're going to have something like this, and is going to be in the kind of action pose with the sword. And it did mention this thing about the its fist lunging forward. This is where probably like another shot would come in handy, but what we could have is, we could even have something like the golem's fist, like the knuckles, like a suggestion of like is raising his hand. And if it, you know, even if it isn't like a fist, if it's not working, you could even have something like the fingers kind of just to sort of suggest a fist. It can either be a fist or a hand. And then what I can do here is I might just move this character along a little bit, and then just draw that in again. So we've got the characters kind of there, and maybe it's actually raised up now. So maybe like the sword is something like that. And again, because it's kind of like low angle, you're not going to see, there's going to be like foreshortening on the legs. So it's going to be this kind of thing. And again, you can look at some reference for this for like foreshortening with characters. But this is kind of essentially where the character is. If you were to kind of do perspective lines, it'd be something like that. Probably the head's a little bit off, but again, this is just a thumbnail. This is just to kind of get the ball rolling. So we've got that shot there, and then we go to 5, and this is a medium close-up, high angle shot of the seeker ducks narrowly avoiding the golem's fist. So this is high angle. Now, we could do something like, you see, I'd flip it. So even though this is a provisional script, I've done that as a high angle where it should be low angle. But actually, and this is where you can sort of change things up. You got that scene that I've just done as the as a high angle, but what I'm doing now is I'm sort of flipping it. So I want that now to be low angle. And so you have the character ducking, the golem's fist, which flies overhead. It suits it more, right? So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to now create another little thumbnail and have it, let's just use the gradient tool, maybe not that. Let's try that again, something like that. And then what we're going to have is the golem. Let me just take that opacity up a little bit. So again, there's going to be like, going to sort of work it out. Maybe it's kind of like crouching down a little bit. So the golem character, and we've got our character here. And maybe it's like, what was it again? So this was going to be a medium close-up. So yeah, there's more like kind of like the back, shoulders, and we've got the character kind of ducking. He's not going to be able to stop that with a sword, right? So we've got something like the sword there, and obviously the body's out of shot. And the fist is going to be, thinking about the logistics of this, the fist is going to be, let me just think this through. So you've got a kind of hand, I would say less fist, more hand, kind of coming over, like he's trying to kind of sort of grab the character. And that will be more like this kind of thing, is like a sweeping motion. And you may not even have the golem character in view. Let's have a look and just trying to think about how the foreshortening is going to work. So you may not even see, let me just go and create another layer. And I'll just take up the opacity, or maybe I'll just use white. Just take that down. So you may even just sort of see the chin of the golem, and it's going to be something like the chest, and maybe you got the shoulders. You're not going to see the legs, but it's going to be something like a swiping motion. Then you've kind of got the arm. And again, I can work this out later. It's not necessary to kind of get this entirely perfect. It's just trying to work out what's happening within the scene, making sure that the kind of proportions are kind of there, just so it works. So it's a kind of swiping, yeah. So it swipes round, and then you've got the character, our hero character, maybe like ducking. So the character's kind of ducking like that. Let's take that opacity up a little bit. So the character's kind of ducking down as it kind of swipes, and just leave it like that. I can work out all the finessing afterwards. I just need to kind of get the rest of the scene in there. Okay, so then we go to the 7, which is the medium close-up, and this is the Crystal Golem. So we've got, where are we? Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Then we've got 6, where the close-up of the character, the sword slams into the torso, and then there's a brilliant explosive flash. Obviously, we're not really going to have color in this, so maybe what happens is he swipes forward, he's exposing himself, and then the hero character brings the sword into the side. So, and the shot was a sort of close up. I would say also in this instance, with it being like a close up, I probably might put a question mark on that, because you can set out with all of this essentially. If we just zoom out, right? So all of this really, at the end of the day, is a sort of guide. And you don't necessarily need to sort of stick with your guide. It's just so you got something to work from. And then along the way, you can sort of change it, as you see fit. Because there's one thing between like writing something and actually illustrating it, and having worked in movies, with film scripts, I can tell you for certain, when the crew are on set, sometimes it doesn't quite fit because the writer's just writing, and they may be very accomplished, but they may not be thinking about all the minutiae and the camera angles. It's just their idea to kind of create the narrative. And so with this, don't be afraid to kind of change it up. So I would say I'd put a question mark on that. I would say something like, could even be a medium shot. You don't want to go full blown like wide shot, because that's too much. So a medium shot would probably be it. Medium, a sort of low angle potentially. So we can go back and have a look at this. So as that kind of character swings around, then we've got, if we go back to, let's go and just do another little gradient on here. And we'll do again, maybe like I'm on ready again, aren't I? On something like that. So the golem character has already kind of swung around. We could even illustrate this in white. So it's kind of like gone like that. It could even be a similar shot. So maybe like the camera is just kind of arcing around. So that is kind of going. So this character here is kind of going off, and it following. So you can see there, and the muscle. Right, so the hand has kind of gone off screen. So he's really like thrown everything into this kind of lunge, but it's left this kind of exposure there. So as that character's like this, so he's kind of swung around, exposed his side, and then that's where it leaves our hero character to then bring the sword in, say there. Something like that. And then brings it again. You can just think about the drawing of it a little bit later. It's mainly about just getting the action in. So this sword kind of swims it, goes in there, and then the impact. So we've got the sort of the seeker's glowing sword slams into the torso. The brilliant explosion. So within that scene, we could kind of show this kind of, let's do this in white. We could show these kind of like the impact of that. Now, ideally, what you'd have is like a close up. So you'd see it kind of smashing in and you'd see these parts. But this could even potentially be like literally another shot. Like, I'll just illustrate this, something like that. So it's actually showing it. But again, it's entirely up to you where you take this. Is just for the purposes of doing the video. Let me just undo that. So we've got that kind of going in there, these shards. And also you'd probably show a reaction, to be fair. You'd have a reaction of the golem. Now, if I just go back to, so we've seen that slamming into it, and then we've got a medium shot. The crystal golem shatters, its body explodes. So even between these, in between these shots, you could easily have maybe even a couple more or even 3 frames where you're showing the kind of, as I mentioned before, like you could have a CU of the golem's face, and then what you could do is you could have like even like an ECU, so you could have like an ECU of the character's face as reaction to after it slams into the side of the golem, and maybe even like another ECU of the of the golem's face or where it's impacted, and you could sort of take it from there. But anyway, so you can go on like that through the rest of it. The next scene we're going to come on to is the shot 8, where we see the character move to the altar. So now we can focus on the next scene with the altar. Now, I'm thinking like because the altar is the kind of center of the sort of focus of the action sequence, we want to give the altar like present, even though it's not like a living being, it's a kind of power source. So that being said, we really want like a sort of point of view of the altar and with the character approaching it. So I'm going to just do a little bit of a gradient here. So just coming up to say something like that. And this is basically to sort of show, after we've seen the golem shatter into sort of pieces, so he's already in that kind of mood, in that kind of, you want to kind of get really the scale of it. I think this is kind of what I'm trying to say. You want to be able to kind of get the scale of what's just happened. And that could be like, low angle. We could see, let me just go and zoom in a second. So we could see something like our hero character. It could even be a full shot. They brought the sword, so they brought the sword round. So the sword's kind of gone that way. It's swiped that way. And we see our character, the stance of our character is something like that. And he's used his left hand to swipe it round. And we're seeing that move. But then from the golem's point of view, what you could have is to sort of show it. So yeah, this is more like a wide shot, really. To sort of show it, you could literally sketch out the golem character as something like that. But then, so you're seeing a little bit of form, but actually what you could show in the scene is it's just literally disintegrating. It's just kind of almost like a building collapse. So, when you show these detonations of, when they're demolishing a building, you see this kind of collapse going on where it's just maybe even from below, that's usually what happens in the kind of, You've got the explosives below, and it all just kind of collapses. So you could have something like that. And again, even in between these shots, you could still potentially have many other shots showing that kind of reaction. But we're not going to concern ourselves with that, again, just for the purposes of this video. It's it's just to illustrate. So we've shown that kind of scene where its body is shattering, and again, it's to kind of show the climax, the moments of destruction, demonstrating the golem's defeat. And then we come on to the wide shot. So that actually changed into a wide shot, between a wide shot and a medium shot, really. Now with this wide shot here, we see the character moving forward towards the altar. Now, again, it's what feels right. So we could have a look at, say, let's go through to here. So if we were to just zoom out again, so we've got that kind of going on. I think going back potentially to like a wide shot like that could even be, it could maybe break it out of the tension of it. So we've had this very intense scene where he's kind of smashed the character. It'd almost be like this next scene would be something like that. It'd be like maybe between a wide shot and a medium shot. And even though we've got the character rushing to the altar through the debris, we could either do it as an over the shoulder of the character into the scene, or we could have it almost from the point of view of the altar. So even though the altar is not like a being, but it is like a presence, it's like an energy source. So what we could have is, if I were to use my gradient again, and maybe we'll have something like, so we could have something like this crystal that the character's going towards. We could illustrate that. So it could be something like, we've got the top of the altar like here. And then we've got this crystal now, to maybe make it look a little bit more ethereal. We can maybe have it just kind of floating. It's like it's just this energy source that's kind of like, it's got this kind of like plinth. But then we have the character. So again, we've got the character coming towards, and we've got the horizon line, because this would be a sort of eye level, I guess. We'd have something like, if that was the horizon line here, then we'd have something like this kind of going on using and of course you can look at my video that I did on perspective to get more of an idea of like how you can approach this. But we've kind of got this vanishing point on the horizon line, and then we've got, and obviously the character is going to be above. If this plinth is going to be, let me just illustrate over here. So if this kind of altar, let me just take that away. So if the altar is, say, something like this, right? And like there's the ground and there's the floating crystal. Our character is probably going to be, it could be a bit, I mean, this could be very, very large, or it could be our character is going to be, if the character was, say, 6 foot, then that would mean this is probably something more akin to like 3 feet. And again, I think it's really important to think about scale when you're doing these things, just so everything kind of looks in proportion. That would then be probably like a foot or two over, so that could be 4 foot. So, actually that would push our character slightly further up. So maybe that'd be like 2 foot. That'd be like 3 foot. Not 3 foot, sorry. That could be, 3 foot and then 4 foot. And our character could be like, 6 foot, something like that, coming into the scene. So with that in mind, the character's going to be maybe like the top of the screen for the time being, and then sort of walking towards sword in hand, because our character still doesn't know that they're out of danger, right? So there could be anything. So they always want to kind of be, on guard. And then we have the character kind of approaching. So they're now approaching the crystal. Okay, so that's the general idea there. And then we come to the final frame, which is the close-up. And we've got the seeker holds the crystal, examining it, and showing sort of relief, satisfaction. So that could be potentially like although it's a close-up, I would also go with something like a slight low-angle close-up. So what I mean by that is we've got our scene here. So this could be, again, something like, well, lit from above because the energy of this crystal. But we could show it as something like, crystal is kind of like, we've got the character. I think it's really important to have the character's face. So we can have the character's face looking down. So again, this is playing with scale, right? So just like the character and the scale that we were using in these scenes, now it's flipped. Now also the character is now dominant, because it's also emphasizing like the character has at least won this part of the story, and it's showing them as being the triumphant and sort of powerful. So we've got the crystal, and of course the crystal can be like illuminating, and maybe we've got part of the character's hand. So we've got the hand wrapped around this kind of crystal. And the character is looking down at it in wonder, maybe. I mean, there's another thing as well. It's like you could show emotion in there. So the character's kind of going like, I can't believe I did it. It's that kind of expression. And the purpose of all of this, so now if we just kind of pull back, the purpose of all of this is really, again, it's about trying to convey emotions and actions and what the motives are within the scene, using these different types of shots to create this kind of, it's almost like a dialogue, or it's like non-verbal communication that's kind of going on. So you don't need to be able to understand a different language. It's a communication through action that you're kind of seeing. So that's the purpose of doing the thumbnails. In the next part of the video, what I'm going to start doing is sketching in the scenes now and sort of firming them up. Okay, so we now have the storyboards finished, and I think they turned out relatively well. I'm just going to kind of zoom in now on the storyboards themselves. Let's just go and have a look. I particularly like the kind of first scene. I think that helps kind of set the tone. That did take quite a long time to establish for some reason. I think it was because I was trying to changing it around a little bit, but the rest of it seemed to kind of work out quite well. I think what I was going to do, and what I may do now, is just put it together in a little bit of an animatic with some music and close out with it. But no, I think all in all, I think it worked out reasonably well. And of course, you can always spend more time on these things. I had about, I don't know, pretty much like, I think all said and done, it's probably taken me a good part of a day to complete all of it, between, like, 2 evenings. But the results, I think, were worked quite well. But anyway, hopefully you found this video useful, and I shall now show you the finished animatic. Thanks for watching, folks. If you are watching on YouTube, by the way, please subscribe and like and leave a comment, and I shall see you in the next video. Okay, take care. Bye for now.